It feels like this is the case all the time, but there's always history on the line for the Penn State Wrestling program. But this weekend, very much so. One that's been building for quite a long time. Greg Pickel here to talk about that, recap Penn State's latest win against Wyoming, and of course, roster and ranking updates as the season gets into the final parts of the non-conference as we get closer and closer to 2026. So Greg Pickel, welcome to the show. I haven't said this to you in a while, but happy holidays, my friend. How's everything going on your end, trying to balance all this stuff, wrestling, football, everything else you do for BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, plus trying to find Christmas presents and be there with your family. How are you doing? How you doing, buddy?
It's a busy time of year, my friend, and I know it is for you as well. Happy holidays to you and also all of our listeners and viewers. We appreciate it. The Penn State wrestling season continues to roll on, T. Frank, at a point now where Penn State entered this year able to set a new dual meet winning streak record. We're going to talk about that here in a little bit, but they have the opportunity to do that this weekend as we thought they might. So that is something that we'll spend plenty of time on. But first, it's worth talking about the Wyoming dual meet victory and how Penn State put itself on the cusp of this history-making moment last weekend on the road out at Wyoming.
Yeah, so take us through all that. Of course, Penn State wrestling fans are aware of what happened, but what were the big takeaways for you from the Wyoming duel?
Yeah, so a couple things. Obviously, Penn State went with a lineup that won 8 of 10 bouts at Wyoming last weekend. Both losses in the upper weights. Connor Mirasola fell to Joey Novak at 197. And Christian Carroll beat Cael Sanderson at heavyweight. So two good matches there. The Penn State guys obviously came out on the wrong side of both of them. And so the question now returns to, with heavyweight, Mirasola battled Lucas Cochran to win that job and seemingly pretty convincingly. So I know some people after his couple of losses here might want somebody else there. Lucas Cochran obviously is the one on the roster to maybe get a shot. We'll see if they change anything up this weekend. I personally kind of doubt it, but time will tell what Cael Sanderson and his staff decide to do. And then with 197, T. Frank, the big takeaway was Josh Barr did not travel, returning All-American, who is not in the lineup right now because he suffered an injury at U23 Worlds in late October. Connor Mirasola has been handling that spot quite well since Barr has been out of the lineup. Again, did lose to Novak, but certainly I thought, maybe I'm sure he didn't feel like he wrestled his best, but he was also wrestling a very talented guy on the other side. So we'll see how it all shakes out, but those were the big two takeaways. PJ Duke continues to be a hammer at 157. The freshman looks nothing like a freshman. Neither does Marcus Blaze at 133. And as we'll talk about here in a minute, the situation at 141 continues to play itself out as well.
Yeah, so interested in your view of the 197 situation. Obviously, if you go through the non-conference season without seeing Josh Barr at all, it's an interesting dynamic of, do you throw him in there cold, if you were to get to the Big Ten season. How do you see that playing out with, a loss here, which I think, in everybody's mind probably opens the door, but maybe it doesn't really do anything because, they know Connor Mirasola in the room. They know Josh Barr in the room better than anybody else. So I guess, how do you view where that situation stands? As I said, I keep hammering home. Like there's 2 weeks left until 2026. So there's at some point decisions need to be made here. And I guess, where are you in that process personally?
Yeah, so Josh Barr, like we said, didn't travel to Wyoming last week. Has not been on the mat in the dual meet season for Penn State yet this year. Cael Sanderson speaking with reporters on Monday in State College saying that Barr would be on the road with Penn State this weekend. Did not say he would wrestle, but obviously you can only travel so many guys. So at the very least, you're going there with at least some kind of anticipation that he could return to the starting lineup. Cael Sanderson's been on the record in the past as saying that he is back in the room, rolling around with the guys, working out with the guys. So, there's been this kind of feeling, I think, that this wasn't going to be a quick fix. Like, it wasn't going to be an immediate return for Josh Barr, but there was never a feeling that it was going to take time for him to get back. And so whether or not that's this weekend or not, you do have 2 matches at the collegiate wrestling duels, and you could split them between Josh Barr and Connor Mirasola. You could obviously send one of them out for both matches as your other alternative. So, they're not going to rush Josh Barr back. That's the last thing they want to do. Certainly, if they think he's ready to go, I would think he gets the call this weekend. But if they wanted to split up the 2 matches and work Josh Barr back into the lineup that way while still leaving options open for whatever they want to do in the Big Ten portion of things, see how he comes through the weekend and go from there, they'd have that option as well. So it'll be fascinating to watch. Certainly, the history side of it is what most people are going to be focused on, but as it relates to potentially setting history again at Nationals later this year, this will be one storyline coming out of the weekend that could help shape that conversation down the road.
Yeah, and so as always, when guys lose or, as guys continue to progress, the rankings update. So where are we now with the Nittany Lions and ranking this team so far through the non-conference season?
Yeah, probably got to address the Flow thing. So Flow over the last couple of weeks has dropped Penn State from number 1 in his rankings to number 2, and now they are number 3 behind Iowa and Ohio State. Reason for that are a couple. PJ Duke is currently, their team rankings each week are a formula-based product that comes with, matching up their rankings to the number of points those rankings would equate to in the team race at Nationals. And when you have PJ Duke not in the scoring conversation, and when you have, obviously, Josh Barr out of that spot, he was number 1 for Penn State at the start of the year, but he hasn't wrestled, so Connor Mirasola's in there, and Cael Mirasola, with the losses, have impacted where those guys are in the rankings. So they're number 3 right now. Penn State fans aren't happy about it. I mean, to me, it just is what it is. I think that where they have the Mirasolas ranked is plenty defensible. I think their thought process behind not bumping Duke up yet, and I guess maybe some would make the argument Marcus Blaze, is fair. I think that at least Duke should be a little bit higher. I think he's shown enough, to start his college career, but he also doesn't have a ton of matches, and certainly not many matches, if any, against national title contender competition. So I understand the idea of living in the moment and ranking what you've seen so far this season, and not letting previous factors or future factors factor into it. So I'm probably not as worked up about it as many Penn State fans and some in the wrestling community are. More of the thought process of it will all work itself out in the end. Does it look a little bit silly? Of course it does, based on where we know things are likely to end up. But if they're ranking in the moment and that's their rationale, you just have to accept it. Penn State fans are not going to accept it. I get it. A lot of people in the wrestling community won't. But otherwise, not a whole lot to write home about regarding the rankings this week beyond that talking point. But, the question now as it relates to this lineup, we talked about 197 and that situation there. And now 141's in focus too. Aaron Cael still not back in action. Penn State put out its match notes for this coming weekend, and they list Nate Desmond, the freshman who bumped up from 125 to win at 141 pounds at Wyoming, is now listed as an or on Penn State's projected lineup with Aaron Cael and with Cael Sanderson. So clearly at this point, the plan is to continue redshirting Braden Davis and get Cael back at some point, and what they do in the interim remains to be seen. Sanderson is a redshirt freshman, used his year of eligibility by competing already earlier this year. Nate Desmond now has 4 dates he can wrestle, 4 event dates he can wrestle before he would burn his red shirt, so he'd be available in theory this weekend. So time will tell how it all plays out. I don't believe Cael was asked if Cael was going to travel this weekend. He was about Barr. But Cael looks to me like he's probably going to be, if he comes back, when he comes back, probably not this weekend would be my guess. So another spot where Penn State will have to decide what it wants to do. Does it go with Desmond again? Does it go back to Sanderson? Does it split matches between those two? Time will tell. But another lineup spot that I don't think we expected to spend so much of November and December talking about that we've certainly had to so far.
Have you heard of Way Fruit Farm? It's this great farm market bakery and cafe. You can shop with them either at their farm in Port Matilda or downtown State College.
No way!
Yes, Way Fruit Farm. They have all sorts of seasonal fruits and veggies.
Way cool!
No, Way Fruit Farm. But anyway, you should visit their bakery and cafe. They serve amazing food all day.
Way!
Fruit Farm!
So that leads us into this coming weekend, and both the dual meet streak win record and the collegiate duels go hand in hand this weekend because they can break the record. So take us through what to expect this weekend from the Nittany Lions and their latest opponents.
Yeah, so Penn State's going to wrestle North Dakota State at 5 p.m. Eastern Time at the Collegiate Wrestling Duels on Saturday in Nashville. And then at 7 p.m., they will face Stanford. Both of those are streaming exclusively on Flow. So if you want to watch, you can do it on Flow. If you subscribe, you can listen to the Penn State Sports Network call over on Lion Vision on their official website. You can also discuss and follow the results with us on the Wrestling Room forum at bluewhiteillustrated.com. But yeah, by beating everyone in their path so far, Penn State is now at 75 consecutive dual meet victories heading into the weekend. The current record at the Division I level is 76 consecutive dual meet victories held by Oklahoma State. Don't need to be a math major to figure this one out. By winning the first match against North Dakota State, Penn State would tie Oklahoma State at 76 and then pass it if it would beat Stanford to get to number 77. And then it would, of course, hope to continue growing that number during the second half of the season. But in both matches this weekend, Penn State will certainly be favored, as it usually is in any dual meet, non-conference, conference, or otherwise. Looking at the projected lineups, T. Frank, when you talk about some potential matches of note, not really a ton in that North Dakota State match that I think anyone was going to get too excited about. The Bison are 1-3 coming into the collegiate wrestling duels, so I think that is, a potential for a Penn State shutout, or at the very least, they might lose a match, maybe two, depending on how the lineup shapes out. But will be a comfortable victory for Penn State. If things happen the way they look like they could happen in the Stanford match, things could definitely be a little bit more interesting there. Penn State's still favored, but you could potentially be looking at Marcus Blaze against Tyler Knox at 133. Knox is currently ranked 6th by Intermat at 133. You're looking at 157. Daniel Cardenas, number 5, could get PJ Duke. Hunter Garvin, number 6 at 165. Obviously, Messenbrink is number 1, and there's a tier all by himself at 165. So could be some interesting matches coming our way in that Stanford duel. We'll just have to wait and see if guys actually take the mat as we expect them to for both programs. But I would say of the two, the Stanford one certainly looks like the one that could be at least a little bit more competitive. The North Dakota State one looks like it could be, a pretty sizable blowout. Time will tell.
Yeah.
But that's where we're at as Penn State looks to make more history in the Cael Sanderson era with its 76th and 77th consecutive dual meet victories on Saturday night in the collegiate wrestling duels in Nashville.
So any final thoughts there on the upcoming weekend, things you want to learn outside of those matchups? What are the things you think are interesting to learn about this team outside of the history and just kind of the ranked guys? Is there anything you want to see improvement from any of the players, anything that you're looking at in terms of storylines for this weekend?
Yeah, I think it really just goes back to, obviously the streak is what it is, and Cael Sanderson was asked about this at his Monday news conference and did not really entertain it. Didn't really have much to say about it, as you would expect. We've been through this with him on numerous occasions when it comes to breaking records or possibly making history. He usually does not have a ton to say about it and focuses on the process and guys getting better each week and so on and so forth. And so, it's just a situation where they don't focus on these things like the outside world does, and that's part of the reason why they're so successful week in and week out, season in and season out. So that's the thing that I externally will get talked about. Internally, they're just looking to wrestle their best and put their guys out there that they think can make them the best in this particular weekend with two duels on the same day. Some will probably curious why there's not a third duel, because this tournament used to be the first day you wrestled two teams from your pool, and then on the third day you had a crossover match with somebody similar to you record-wise from the other pool. For whatever reason, they got rid of that this year, so there's only 2 matches. There is no third. If you think we're sitting here and crazy and why aren't we talking about a third, that's why. It's not going to exist. And so, just seeing where Penn State goes lineup-wise, I think is a big talking point now. Obviously, at 141 is one spot, and then at 197 where things go. So other than that, we'll see what these guys can go out and do, but expect Penn State to pick up 2 more victories and head into the Big Ten portion of the season undefeated.
All right. Well, follow bluewhiteillustrated.com and, of course, Greg Pickel on Twitter to find out more and to follow along with Greg as he reports on this throughout the weekend. That'll do it today for the Penn State Wrestling Show. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. For Greg Pickel, we'll be back next week. Christmas. Back probably. Greg, are we going to take off till the end of the year? Now that I'm thinking about it, like live here on the
Yeah,
show,
we
having
can.
this
If
conversation.
anything, I would put it this way: if anything outside of the norm happens over the weekend, we'll probably find some time to try and do something, even if it's short. Maybe we can stick it in a BWI Live or something like that. But yeah, otherwise, I would think we'll get back to it when Penn State does, which they won't take off, obviously, for the end of the year, but there will be downtime. We won't hear from Cael Sanderson until January. So that'd be my expectation at this point, T. Frank. But as you know, buddy, when the news happens, we're like, we run to the scene. So we will be here if and when we need to be. But otherwise, hope everyone has a great holidays and a happy new year.
Yeah, the worst first responders you could ever ask for. First people there to stand around and look at the news. Okay, so with that in mind, happy holidays to everybody. Thank you to everybody who supported this show as we've gotten it off the ground here in the first 2 years. Again, subscribe here to the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. Like this video, hype it up, all the things you can do, push all the buttons, give it all the bells and whistles. We'll be back in the new year to discuss Penn State Wrestling on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel.